Welcome back to another fly tying episode with Catching Colorado. In the vise today I have a U201 nymph hook, and I'm going to be putting on a 70 denier white UTC thread. Keep in mind, we are definitely trying to keep this thread flat as we go all the way down the hook. So you will see me counter spinning the bobbin quite a bit just to make sure that happens. I'm going to snip my thread free here, and I'll tell you a little bit about this fly. This is the Juju Baetis. This is a Charlie Craven special. Very, very long-lasting fly. Been around forever, and it just flat catches fish, and that's why people love it. So I'm going to tie it up here for kind of a Deckers situation for all my Colorado people. Deckers is a tailwater out of Cheeseman Canyon. Deckers is the town, and basically when you fish there, you kind of know that you're going to be dealing with some finicky fish. So our goal today is to build a pattern that we can work with at Deckers, which is usually smaller, somewhere between that 18 and 24 size. So as I continue here, I have got a hen saddle feather. This is from a soft hackle patch that I have. And I'm going to trim the fluff out, and then I'll show you kind of what the feather looks like. It's a molted feather, so it's got a little bit of character to it. Not quite what I would like, but this was what was available to me. But still pretty close to what I would use. So there's this molted hen feather. So kind of a cool little pattern there. But what we're going to do is we are going to pull about 8 strands or so, maybe a little bit less, maybe 6, depending on the size of your fly, free from that feather. Then I'm going to focus in my hands on lining up those tips fairly well. Lay this over the back of the hook. We're going to do one sort of loose wrap right on top there. And then I'm going to work this back loosely kind of to where I want my tail to start. And then I'm going to bend these butt ends up, and while pulling, just kind of measure what I think is the perfect Baetis tail. I think that's pretty close. I'm going to unwind my thread here and really get it nice and flat. And this is where I'm going to lock everything in, and then I'm going to creep that forward and just trying to keep that thread and the butt ends on top of the hook. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift these butt ends up. Oh, I got some excess material here. Lift these butt ends up and snip it free. And that is the beginning of our Juju Baetis. All right, so now that we've got to that point, we're going to tie in super hair or supreme hair. So super hair, I am just getting a couple pieces of each here. We have a dark brown, that's what you're seeing in this, and then we have a pure black right here. So I'm going to pull 1 black strand and 2 dark brown strands. So this is what we're left with. Is basically 3 fine strands of super hair, and I'm going to work my fingers up to the very front of it, and we're going to lay it on top of the hook, and then we're going to do one loose wrap, get it laid on top there. Then we're going to pull this back so that all the super hair is behind the eye, and as I kind of hold it to myself, I'm just going to work the thread down the body and get it to the tail of the Juju Baetis, which is, I would argue, right about there. And then as I unwrap my thread, this is where I want to be a little bit more precise and make sure I've got a nicely tapered body, which I do. And the top of this fly will have a little bit more of that like rounded egg-shaped taper. So that's kind of where I want to leave it, right about there. So what I'm going to do is kind of drop my bobbin down a little bit. I'm going to grab these super hairs and I'm going to get them nice and close. And as I rotate my vise to myself, I am lining up the super hair as best as I can to create a nice ribbed body. The first turns are always going to be the hardest. So if you can get the first turns going, then the rest will kind of fall into place. But the first turns, definitely the hardest, just trying to get everything together. And if you kind of hold it pretty much vertical to the fly, you have a better chance of keeping it all tight. But I like a very nice body, so I try to maybe take a little bit more time on this. This is the hardest part of this fly for sure. So I'm kind of working it up, and then anytime I see a little bit of gap there, I just kind of push it back into place and then keep working my super hair up the hook. And once you get it to about here, you don't have to be as perfect because a lot of this is going to get covered up. But I like to get it fairly close to the end here. And then we're going to get a couple wraps of white thread in. And then I've got my leftover super hair here, which will be great for multiple other flies. So I'm going to snip that out fairly close, just like so. I'm going to put that super hair on deck for the next fly and work my thread back to where we started. Then I'm going to take my whip finish tool and I'm going to do a 2-turn whip finish, and we're going to get the white thread out of here, and we're going to make way for black thread. We're going to put in some black UTC. This is 70 as well, and I'm going to do the same concept, just trying to maximize the flat thread ability of UTC thread. That is what makes nicely, perfectly tapered bodies. So I'm going to just make sure this thing isn't too corded up and that we can get some flat turns in here. And what we're looking for is kind of a decent segmentation where you have about 60% body of super hair and about 40% of kind of the black UTC thread, building what we are basically essentially building as our wing case. So I'm going to stop it there, and that is just sitting roughly right at the back of the wing case. And now I'm going to get some tinsel, some pearl or opal tinsel in medium, and we're going to tie it in right at the back of the wing case. And I'm going to put it just on the near side, so you're seeing the shot from my vantage point. And I'm going to roll that up onto the top of the hook, kind of straighten it out a little bit, and then get a couple turns in there to hold it down. And then I've got something on my vise that actually holds the tinsel. So I'm going to have that hold the tinsel for me, kind of backing out of the way. And then the next step here is going to be tying in the fluorofiber. This is what's going to make the legs of this fly. And we want about, I would say 6 to 8 strands of this. Fluorofiber, very, very thin fibers. We're going to use these to really accentuate the legs. I think Charlie Craven uses maybe like a gray color. We are going to use like a shimmering silver color. I just like how it pops in the water. That's simply all it is. I want to give my flies the most flash I possibly can. So I've got 8 fibers. And I'm going to get those all nice and together. And then I'm going to trim them very close. And you want to count them so that you just kind of know what you're working with can be split evenly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one loose wrap here, just like we did with the tinsel. I'm going to pull those back, and then we are going to build our head here. And what I want to build is sort of a little bulbous egg-looking head. Nothing crazy. Again, we're not trying to do too much. All right, so now is the part of the fly where we want to make as minimal turns as possible. So I'm going to take all of my legs and I'm going to lean them forward on the fly. I'm going to keep a lot of tension on the legs. I'm going to loosely lay my thread over the top. And then once I know that we're kind of settled with gravity, I'm going to pull down on that thread and really lock in those legs right on top of the hook. And then I'm going to grab that tinsel and we're going to do the exact same procedure. So as you know, I did not do a locking wrap there, just did one loose wrap. And I did the same thing for the tinsel. And now I am going to get one wrap over the tinsel as a securing wrap for both. And then I'm going to move that tinsel back and really lock in the tinsel with two more kind of securing wraps over the top. So that has kind of completed the tinsel portion. I'm going to put that tinsel back in my vise just to kind of hold it off. And then what I want to do is I want to split these legs evenly. So the reason that we counted them was so that we could split them evenly. So I have got a good even split there of the legs. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave half of the legs hanging out the front still. And I am going to take my thread and while pulling sort of down on the legs nearest me, make a wrap. And then I'm going to move those other legs on the other side and I'm going to sort of hold them up and do the same thing. And then we're going to get one more wrap in there just to secure the legs. Finally, we can whip finish this fly. So I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to get a 2-turn whip finish behind the eye there and pull it fairly tight. And then come in here and snip off my thread close. We do not need to worry about more whip finishing because we are going to use a resin on the fly. So now we're just trimming up. So I'm going to lift this tinsel out of the way and I'm going to get in here and just nick it fairly close. I would love to get that closer. I have some better scissors on order, but that's going to have to do for now. And then this is where Charlie would probably trim the legs. I'm not going to. I'm not as accurate with my resins yet. So I'm going to start there and then I will go for maybe doing something different with the legs. So we are going to take a Knot Sense UV resin and I'm going to put the tiniest drop on the end of my bodkin here. Nothing big at all. We are working with an 18 fly here. And I'm going to lay that drop right on that tinsel. And then I'm going to use the tip to kind of bring that resin down and sort of make sure that we get a lot of pop out of that ribbing we just did. And if we need a little bit more, I'm okay with that. I would rather have less on there and come back for more resin than to put too much on. So there's a little bit more resin on this fly. And I would say that that could be considered too much, but we've got a little bit of a lip there with that pearl tinsel that didn't get cut all the way out. So that being said, I think that's looking fairly good. And we could try to trim that out a little bit too as we go here. But that is basics of the fly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my UV and I'm going to hit it on all sides. Just really get that UV light going there. Give it some love with the UV light. Make it nice and taut. And this is why we didn't have to worry about too many whip finish turns because we were going to put this on there the entire time and it really just holds the fly together. Last step of this fly. Trimming out these legs. So I'm going to grab all the legs together at once. And the reason I'm doing this is because these legs are going to be usable again. So if I keep them all together, there's a good chance I can use them again on the next fly and the next and the next. So I'm going to hold them together, pull them back, and we want to trim them so they're right past the wing case. So I'm going to come in right about here and trim those, and that is about the length that you want for the legs. You could make them a little bit shorter, you could make them a little bit longer, just kind of depends on, you know, what you think looks good or your style. I think these are pretty good. They could be maybe a little bit shorter, but in general, I really like those legs. So that right there is the Juju Baetis. And this pattern is absolutely deadly on all tailwaters, especially deckers, but just a lot of fish can be caught on this basically BWO nymph pattern. It's a mayfly pattern. It mimics mostly a blue wing olive, and it will crush fish. So if you're having a tough time, you can't find the right fly, the Juju Baetis in the original color tied by Charlie Craven is a fish killer. If you have any questions about this fly, leave them down in the comments below. I really appreciate you watching the video. Please consider liking and subscribing if you want to see future content. And comment down below what future flies you'd like me to tie. I'm always interested in your suggestions and would love to put some things in the vise that I'm not familiar with. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Catching Colorado.
Thanks for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in more relatable content, you can check out these videos right here. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe down below so you can stay updated on our next adventures.